Makue singing Soweto Blues. Mary Makue died earlier this week after a concert in Italy. This great South African singer. We're going to ask about her in a little while at the end of this segment. Juan?
Well, the United Nations Refugee Agency, which distributes food to half of Gaza's 1.5 million people, has warned that it will run out of food in a day if Israel's blockade of the Gaza Strip does not stop. It called the blockade, quote, a physical as well as a mental punishment. Israel is now allowing limited amounts of fuel after Gaza's sole power plant came to a halt Monday, plunging the area into darkness. But Israel is still blocking food deliveries, and aid agencies estimate the new supply of fuel will run out within a day and a half. An Egyptian-brokered ceasefire that began in June has been disrupted following the imposition of the blockade, and Israel's foreign ministry has accused Hamas of exploiting the situation for political gain. Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said Tuesday that a violent confrontation with Hamas was inevitable.
We're in no hurry, but we know very well that the amount of confrontation will eventually come. The question is not whether there will be confrontation, but when will it take place, under what circumstances, and who will control these circumstances, who will dictate them, and who will know to exploit the time from the beginning of these ceasefire until the moment that the confrontation in the best possible way.
The Bush administration strongly backed Israel's stranglehold on Gaza. It's unclear whether the policy will change under an Obama White House. Obama's first major appointment was to select Congressmember Rahm Emanuel as his chief of staff. On foreign policy, Emanuel is thought to represent the right wing of the Democratic Party, vocally backed Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and its 2006 attack on Lebanon. Emanuel's father, Benjamin Emanuel, was a member of the Irgun, a right-wing group that carried out attacks on Palestinians in the years leading up to Israel's establishment as a state in 1948, recently made some controversial comments on his son's appointment. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper last week, Rahm Emanuel's father said, quote, obviously he will influence the president to be pro-Israel. Why wouldn't he be? What is he, an Arab? He's not going to clean the floors of the White House. We're joined now in our Firehouse studio by two internationally recognized human rights advocates. Diana Buttu is a Palestinian-Canadian lawyer. He used to work with the Negotiation Support Unit of the Palestine Liberation Organization, or PLO. Reverend Edwin Eddie Makue is General Secretary of the South African Council of Churches, involved in the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa from 1982. In 2005, he traveled to the Palestinian territories to monitor the elections. They are both on an anti-apartheid speaking tour across this country for the next 2 weeks. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Diana Buttu, I wanted to start with you on Rahm Emanuel's father's comment, its significance.
It is. It's a very significant comment, not just because it's coming from his father, but the fact that Rahm Emanuel himself has not backed down from this comment. He hasn't made any statements separating himself or distancing himself from his father's comments. And his voting record in the past in Congress leaves a great number of Palestinians and people who are concerned about Israel's occupation of Palestine, leaves a number of us concerned.
And the situation right now in Gaza, this latest crisis, what triggered it, and what are the prospects for being able to end it?
Well, very interestingly enough, last week, as people here were celebrating the election victory of Barack Obama, Israel used that opportunity to go into the Gaza Strip and kill 6 Palestinians and kidnap another 6 Palestinians. And since that time, the Egyptian-brokered ceasefire has actually come to a halt. I think that we're going to continue to see much more violence, primarily because of the fact that Israel is now leading up to an election. And as has been the case with every election in Israeli history, each candidate tries to use his or her strength to demonstrate just how strong they are and how much they're going to fight the Palestinians, rather than demonstrate how much they're going to try to bring peace to the region.
Now, what about Ehud Olmert, who is about to step down, but is still the prime minister, saying you got to give up the land, which is remarkable given what his position has been as prime minister. What's the significance of this?
I think it's very interesting that all of these politicians are now coming forward and saying this. You know, 20 years ago, Amy, you wouldn't have been able to find an Israeli politician who would say that they have to get out of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Today, the numbers are increasing. The question then becomes, how are they going to withdraw? Are they going to withdraw and have equality for the Palestinians, being in the form of an equal state, or is it going to be equal rights? I haven't heard any of these politicians come forward and mentioned the idea of equality. That said, I think that Omar's comments are very telling. But I think that any prime minister who's going to come into power after Prime Minister Omar is going to face the same problem, which is the Israeli political system is driven in such a way that it ends up rewarding right-wing extremist parties. That's the way they form coalitions. And these right-wing extremist parties end up getting a lot of money from the government in order to fund and continue to build settlements. If they don't get the money, the coalition will break. And has been the case over the course of the past few decades. The only way that governments fall in Israel is either a corruption scandal or failure to pass the budget. So all of these politicians know very well that the way to move forward is to placate the right, and I fear that they're going to continue to do so.
Do you see change with the Obama administration?
It really depends on who he's going to put into the administration, and I'm a little bit worried that we're going to see the same faces that we saw under the Clinton era, Dennis Ross, Martin Indyk, so on and so forth.
Former U.S. ambassador to Israel.
Precisely. I'm concerned that there are going to be people who were formerly affiliated with the pro-Israel lobby that are going to be put into place to work on the Obama administration. More importantly, I'm concerned that this is going to be item number 20 on Obama's agenda, and because it's so far down on the agenda that I don't think that we're going to see any change anytime soon. That's what I'm afraid of.
And the question of the relationship with Hamas, obviously during the Bush administration, the attitude was no dealing whatsoever with those who were elected by the people. Your sense whether this will change at all?
I don't think it will change, although it should change. There was a very interesting article that came out in Haaretz, which is an Israeli paper, just 2 days ago. The person interviewing members of Hamas is an Israeli journalist named Amira Haas. And in the interview, Hamas came out very clearly and said that what they want to see is they want to see a two-state solution. So there is no longer the pretext there for not talking to Hamas. But unfortunately, we continue to put our head in the sand.
So, Reverend Eddie Makue, how did you end up going to the Palestinian territories, to the occupied territories from South Africa?
The leading or the majority political party in South Africa at the moment is the African National Congress, and they are also the party in the government, and they have had an historic relationship with the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And when Yasser Arafat passed on, there was the need to have the elections there, and the South African government felt that it's going to be important that we also look at bringing in civil society organizations in the observation of that election process, because we know that very often the election results are disputed. And it is against that background, but very importantly also that we, in terms of our faith, have an historic relationship with that particular region of the world, looking at it as the Holy Land. And we are very disturbed at the fact that while there's all this talk in the world about peace, we find that we in the faith communities who preach peace are very often experiencing great difficulty in actually realizing peace for people in that important region.